It's a new month, it's a new dawn, it's a new day. And that means it's time for a new reading wrap up. I can't believe I just did that. My singing voice is disgusting. I hope you guys, your ears are still okay. They're not bleeding. Anyway, yeah, it's time for a new reading wrap up for November. I read 20 books last month. Lots of variety. I read some romance, some fantasy, some thrillers, one historical fiction. So you guys will be hearing about a lot of things. Some are super popular, some are underrated. Lots of variety. Let's just get into it. Starting with the romance genre, my favorite. Okay, so the first one I read was Jingle Wars by R. Holmes and Veronica Eden to get that holiday spirit. Look at this cover. That's what drew me in. It's so cute. And it also encapsulates what the book's about really well. So that's good. This is a small town rivals / enemies lovers holiday romance. It follows Finn and Freya, who are both helping their families run hotels, inns, resorts. I don't know what the proper term is. I forgot what the term they use because I read this at the beginning of the month, but they have like a hotel thing they have to take care of, and their hotels are right next to each other. So there's this rivalry there, and it gets exacerbated when this holiday competition comes to town, and whoever wins gets $100,000. They both want to win it and put that money into their resorts, inn, hotel, whatever. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't like the first half of this book, but I enjoyed the second half after they got together. It was cute. I just didn't like how Finn acted at first. He was very immature and pissy about the fact that Freya could run a resort better than his grandparents could. And I just kind of wanted him to grow up a little bit. And this is kind of a small thing, but it bothered me a lot. He kept calling Freya traitor. It was like his nickname for her, but she never betrayed him, so the nickname doesn't even make sense. And he just kept saying it, and I just kept getting increasingly annoyed. Like, the reason he called her that was because she was working for the competition, but like she didn't even know him at the time when she started working there. She met him afterwards. So how is she a traitor? She never betrayed him, and you need to actually betray someone to earn that title. So yeah, that kind of bothered me, even though it's a small thing. It just annoyed me because that's not what traitor means. And he's just very immature for a middle-aged man. And oh, here's another example of him being an immature old man. Another girl made him mad, and he ended up taking her picture and posting it online with a caption calling her a Grinch. Like, sir, be so for real. You are not 12, you know? But after they got together, he became really sweet, and I actually enjoyed my reading experience. And then I read Things We Left Behind by Lucy Score. This is the third book in the Knockabout trilogy following Lucian and Sloane. It's Friends to Enemies Lovers and Second Chance. I loved the snarky banter. It was so much fun. And I like that we saw a lot of the main characters from the previous books and found, like, what's it called? The found family theme. I loved that. It was also cute with everyone. But one thing I hate in enemies lovers books is when the hate doesn't seem justified, and that's what happened here. I don't really get why Lucian held on to that grudge for so long, because at the end of the day, she did what she did to protect him. She did it all for him. Like, I understand 17-year-old child being upset about it, but the dude is in his 40s now, and he's like, he should have realized that what she did was, I mean, it was the right thing to do. And I also wish we got more flashbacks of them in their teenage years to see how they grew so close. Like, we were definitely told they were close more than we were shown it. So I ended on a 4-star rating. I still enjoyed it, but it wasn't, there were some things that I wish were better. And then I read Burn For You by J.T. Gessinger. This is a fake marriage / marriage of convenience, and I end up DNFing this like between 50 and 60% of the way through. I tried to get through it because I hate DNFing, but this book was just unbearable for me. I did not like the writing at all. There were so many outlandish similes and metaphors that took me out of the story. Like, I remember it said, fine as frog's hair. Like, what? What does that even mean? I didn't even know frogs had hair. And so many of the similes and metaphors just had me sat there, like, so confused. And I just didn't like that. And there was an excessive amount of exclamation points, which I realized after reading this that is something I cannot stand in writing, is when there's so many exclamation points everywhere when they're in their dialogue and in their internal monologues. There was just so many exclamation points. And it was just, why was everyone screaming? Like, in my head when I was reading that, everyone was just screaming in my head, and it was bothering me a lot. But it wasn't just the writing that was bothering me. If it was just the writing, I would have given it a 2 stars, because writing taste is subjective. But that wasn't the only issue. It was also kind of problematic with the stereotypical depictions of Black people. I was surprised more people didn't call that out in the Goodreads reviews, but Yeah, that was something I noticed right away within the first couple of pages. Is very stereotypical, and there was also shaming women for wearing too much makeup. It's like heavily emphasized that the female main character almost never wears makeup. Like there's literally like 4 paragraphs dedicated to how little makeup she wears, and women are also shamed for wearing provocative clothing, and I don't like that. Let's support women, okay? Honestly, the only thing I liked about this book were the recipes that were included, but I can Google cobbler recipes, so I didn't need this book to get to them, and I just DNF'd because I was not getting anything out of it. The recipes were not worth the trouble, so yeah, in case it's not clear, it's a 1 star. I didn't like almost anything about it. And another thing, this is another, okay, what was I gonna say? I know what I'm gonna say, but I just have to, like, articulate it. Okay. But this is not a slow burn. That's what I'm trying to say. Even though the series is literally called Slow Burn, and this is the first book in the series, this is not a slow burn. He starts crushing on her after one interaction and has a wet dream about her later that night. What is slow? Not that. And then I read Everyone Hates Kelsey Miller by Meredith Ireland. This is a YA romance about 2 academic rivals. They go on a road trip together. I loved this. It was so cute. This was a 5-star read. I loved Eric especially. So sweet and thoughtful and a feminist. At one point, some guy's like, "Does she belong to you?" And he's like, "No, she belongs to herself." And I love that so much. That was so hot. It's so much better than the "your mine" thing we see in most romances. Like, I love that. She belongs to herself. Acknowledging her as her own person and not just like a possession or an extension of you. Love that. Love that. And this also a diverse read, which is also good. We always need more of those in the world. And then I read A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime by Monica Murphy. This is a high school romance following Crew and Ren. They don't like each other, but they're forced to work together for a project in their class. So there's like forced proximity, a little bit enemies, lovers. It's bad boy, good girl. I didn't like this. It was a 2-star. I thought I would based on the tropes and stuff, but no, 2-star. My main problem was just how infantilized the heroine was. Like, she would wear little girl socks, whatever that means. She would suck on lollipops all the time. She wears Mary Janes. She has bows in her hair, and it was just weird because like so much of this book was about sex, and the heroine was made to be like a child. It was just icky, and her virginity was emphasized a lot. Like after they had sex for the first time, he took her purity ring and put it on a necklace because she belongs to him now. Apparently, just major ick. And it was also just way too long. Like the last few chapters were all fluff and all unnecessary in my opinion. There were some cute scenes, which is why I'm not giving it a 1, but overall this book just made me feel icky and I did not like it. And then I read A Lot Like Adios by Alexis Daria. This follows Michelle and Gabe, and they were best friends in high school. Both had crushes on each other, but they were like too scared to say anything for a long time. And then he moved away, and they haven't really spoken since then. But they've been brought back together for a work project. And yeah, this was a cute book. I liked it. They write sci-fi fanfiction together, guys. That's so cute. I love that storyline. I also love the cover. It's very vibrant. And this book deals with heavy topics like being estranged from your family, so it's not all just a bunch of fluff. And I really liked it. The reason it's not a 5 though is I did feel like it was a bit too long. Like a sex scene or two could have been removed and the story would have remained the same. I was kind of over it by the end a little bit, but I still really enjoyed it. Then I read The Savage Wild by Roxy Moore. This follows Wilder and Imogen. He's a pilot and he's flying her over somewhere when the engine stops and they end up crashing into a mountain, and then they're stranded together and trying to survive. And they also have a very rough history. It's second chance, enemies, lovers, the stranded together trope, obviously, the one bed trope. And there's also popular boy, nerd girl. I think I covered all the tropes I wanted to cover. Okay. Anyway, this sounded really good on paper. Like those tropes, I will eat them up on any other day. But I did not like this. I ended up giving it 2 stars, and that's me being generous. The hero was absolutely awful. He's one of the worst heroes I've ever read about. Truly a terrible human being. Like the thing he did to her to make them enemies is so disgusting and awful, and I literally didn't want her to get with him because he was just terrible. Like, if he had good character development, I might have still been able to overlook the thing he did when they were in high school, but he didn't. He's still terrible. And he still used women the way he did as a teenager, the way he speaks about girls, and the way he speaks to girls who have crushes on him, because it was just disgusting, like, the way he spoke to women and about women. And he would, like, lead them on, and I was just not a fan of his character at all. Like, he literally led a girl on, which I already said, but I'm stumbling over my words. Like he makes me so mad that I can't even articulate how mad. But what I was trying to say is he let a girl believe they were dating because he wanted to have sex, as if there are plenty of girls who want no strings attached to sex. And he did this as an adult man. Like, be so for real. If he's as hot as he claims he is, he would not need to do this. Excuse me. And then when he decided he wanted Imogen instead, the way he broke it off with the other girl was so cruel for no reason. And I was just so mad. That girl was nothing but kind to him, and this book just made me so furious. Imogen could have done so much better than him. Amy could have done so much better than him. Speaking of Imogen, the nickname he has for her is so demeaning, and she asks him to stop multiple times, and he doesn't because he does not respect women. I could not get on board with this guy. I was so tempted to give this a 1 star because it made me so upset, but I did like the survival aspect, so I gave it a very generous 2-star rating. Anyway, I know that review for this book was kind of a mess because it just made me so mad, and I can't, like, when I'm mad, I can't think properly. But bear with me, okay? And then I read The Way I Am Now by Amber Smith. This comes after The Way I Used to Be, which is one of my favorite books. So I had high expectations for this, and it lived up to them. I gave it 5 stars. I loved watching Eden's recovery and growth. If you don't know, this duology deals a lot with rape and the aftermaths of that, and Eden is trying to move on with her life now. And I just liked watching her journey, and I loved the romance. Josh and Eden are so cute. I love Josh. He's so sweet. And unlike the first book, this is dual perspectives, and I liked being in his sweet little brain. He's such a sweetie pie. And I also like the court case stuff. I thought that was really interesting and really put into perspective how hard it is for survivors to come out with their stories and what some of the terrible things they have to hear are after they come out with their story. And I love this duology so much. It's so good. 5 stars. And then I read Only When It Says by Chloe Leese. This is another 5-star read. This is the first book in the Bergman Brothers series, which I do plan on continuing because I love this so much. This is a college sports romance featuring Willa, who's a soccer player, and Ryder, who I adore even though I hate his name. This book starts with her repeatedly asking to borrow his notes, and he ignores her, and she gets pissed about it because she assumes he's just a jerk who's ignoring her for no reason. But what she doesn't know is that he's deaf, so he didn't hear her asking for his notes, and their professor ships them, so he pairs them together for a project, and it's sorry, I'm stumbling over my words again. It's enemies to friends to lovers. And this was Frenemies to Lovers done so well. Like, I love Enemies to Lovers and Friends to Lovers, and this was a mashup of both of them, and I just loved it so much. It was so perfect, and the slow burn was delectable. Their prank war was so fun. I had so much fun. I had so much fun with this. It was just a good time. And with that said, though, there were some heavy subjects present in this, like terminal illness, so be aware that going in, it's not just, like, super fluffy. There's some heavy stuff, but it was still super fun, and I loved it. 5 stars. And then I read The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. I love this so much. It was one of my favorite reads of the entire year. It's a billionaire romance, enemies, lovers, Boston Play, Grumpy Sunshine, all tropes I love. And it actually delivered. And it also takes place in an amusement park, which is so fun. The things I love most in the world are books and amusement parks, and this is a combination of both. So obviously, I loved it. My 2 favorite things in one. I loved the banter between the main characters. I love how grumpy Rowan was, and like some of the things he said were so grumpy and cynical, and it was so funny. Like, I was literally cackling at some of the things he said. And when he found out her favorite movie was Pride and Prejudice, guys, he decided to watch all 17 versions of it because he's obsessed with her. And I love that so much. And the scene where they cuddled and watched it together, I'm obsessed. That was so cute. And that's not even the best part. He organized a book signing event for her favorite author in New York City, and then he flew her out there to surprise her. Are you kidding? He got so sweet, and I just love watching this grumpy man turn into the super sweet man who's all about their girl. It was just so cute, and the smut 8. This is a 5 stars. Obviously, I love this. I have no complaints. I love it so much. And this cover, stunning. Okay, now we're getting into the fantasy. The first fantasy I read was Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo. This is the second book in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, which I love so much. I don't know what it is about this universe, but I'm obsessed with it. The world is so fun and creative, and I love it so much. I love the villain. I love the new characters. I'm so attached to them already. Nikolai, especially. If he dies, I die. Internally, of course, but like, he's just so charming and clever, and I love him. And there were some flaws to this book. Like, there were a lot of missed opportunities for action, and the romance was not my favorite. The main couple was fighting most of the time, which was no fun. But I'm still giving this 5 stars because I have so much fun with these characters and the world, and I just love it. I love it. So even though there's flaws, I'm gonna overlook them. Moving on. Crescendo by Becca Fitzpatrick. This is the second book in the Hush Hush series. I was really excited to start this because I loved the first book so much, but I was a little disappointed because there was so much other woman drama, and it was just a little annoying. And the other woman was also Nora's bully, So I just felt like it was the ultimate betrayal from Patch that he was like flirting with her and stuff. I was not a fan. I gave it 4 stars, so I liked it. I just wish there was more Patch and Nora and less Patch and Marcy. And then I read A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas, which is the 4th book in the Avatar series in Nesta and Cassian's point of view. And we're basically watching Nesta learn to overcome her PTSD and make friends. This took me by surprise. I honestly did not expect to like this because I wasn't a huge Nesta fan, and I didn't think I'd be able to stand being her point of view for almost 800 pages. The only reason I decided to read it was because I wanted to read about her romance with Cassian. I liked their banter in the other books. So imagine my surprise when I actually didn't care about the romance at all, and Nesta ended up becoming my favorite character in the series. Like this really took me by surprise. Like the romance wasn't bad, but I don't know. It wasn't my favorite, and I was so much more invested in Nesta's adorable friendships with Gwen, Emery, and the house. The house. Literally the house. Like the friendships were so wholesome, and I got so attached to the friend group, and the romance I feel like was kind of overshadowed by the strong female friendships. And I loved how character driven this book was. Also, it's much more character driven than the other books in the series, and I think that's for the best because it really helped me to understand and root for Nesta, who I was not a huge fan of in the other books, like I said. And yeah, I just loved it so much. 5 stars. I was somehow never bored, even though at least 500 pages of this were just Nesta walking up and down the stairs and training. I ate this repetitiveness up. And I read The Coven by Harper L. Woods. This is also 5 stars. This is about Willow, who is forced to attend this gothic, witchy boarding school, and the romance is between her and her headmaster, Alaric. I love Willow so much. She's such an insolent little baddie, and I was living for her rebellion. I love the gothic vibes. And one thing that I thought was so cool about this was that some of the witches don't have skin. They were just bones. I don't know. I thought that concept was so cool, and the images I was conjuring up in my head of these people were so sick. It was just so cool. And the romance was really hot, and the plot was so wild. Like the last 15% of this book had my jaw scraping the floor. It was so crazy, and the reveal was so well done. And I ended up voting for this in the romance section of the Goodreads Awards because I loved everything about it. Like the plot twist, the romance, the characters, the vibe, everything was so good. Highly recommend. Can't wait to read the next one. I haven't gotten to it yet, but I will. And then I read A Curse for True Love by Stephanie Garber, which was yet another 5-star read. The fantasies this month were just eating. This is the final book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, and this book read so quickly. I was devouring it. It was so addicting. And Stephanie Garber is the queen of making me think things are going well for the main couple and then ruining everything 2 seconds later. My heart was broken and repaired and then broken and then repaired and then broken and repaired so many times. This book was a roller coaster and I loved every second of it. The last 15% was so fast-paced and crazy, and I was dying on the edge of my seat the entire time. It was so good. Also, I'm a hardcore shipper of Castor and Lala. Like, we got like 2 pages of them interacting, and I'm already obsessed. Their banter was so good. Please, Stephanie Garber, please, I am begging, give me a book about them. They would serve enemies, lovers, and the required love. I want their book so bad. I need it. I'm really hoping she writes it. And then I read Bring Me Your Midnight by Rachel Griffin. This cover, stunning, first of all. This is a fantasy about a young witch named Mortana who learns that everything she has been told about the world has been a lie, and the romance is between her and a witch who practices dark/high magic, which she is very against its enemies, lovers. I really like this. I gave it 4 stars. The reason it's not a 5 is because the romance happened so fast that they were waxing poetry about each other after a few on-page interactions. And while the lovey-dovey quotes were very beautiful, they weren't completely believable to me because it seemed like these intense feelings came out of almost nowhere. But like I said, the writing, beautiful. This author has a lot of potential. I'm going to read something else just like a slower burn. And I would recommend it still. So, and then moving on to thrillers. The first one I read was The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. My sister got this for me, and then I read it. The same murder mystery. A girl named Megan goes missing, and the heroine, Rachel, she throws herself into this investigation and tries to figure out what happened to her. The beginning of this book felt really slow. And when I'm reading a thriller, I want to be on fast pace. I want to be on the edge of my seat, and I wasn't getting that feeling for most of this book. But the last 25% or so was so good, and it's what made the book a 4-star read. Otherwise, it would have been a 3 if it kept the pacing of the beginning. Yeah, the last quarter of the book, I was on the edge of my seat, eagerly flipping the page. It was giving everything a thriller is supposed to give. I just wish that the entire book had that level of suspense. If it did, this would have been 5 stars for sure, but it didn't. So 4 stars. And then I read The Coworker by Frida McFadden. This is a mystery thriller about a girl who goes missing, and her coworker is trying to find out what happened to her. This is told in dual POVs, so you get the missing woman's point of view and the main characters, and it is so good. I gave this 5 stars. It's so fast-paced and well-written and addicting. I read this so fast. And all the loose ends were tied up really well by the end, and the characters were really interesting. I just really liked it. Okay. With that said, the big plot twist was disappointing. I predicted almost the entire thing. And usually I don't give thrillers 5 stars unless the plot twist gets me, because when I read thrillers, the main thing that makes it or breaks it for me is the twist. That's what I'm reading it for. But this was just so well written, and I still had such a fun time reading it that I don't feel right giving it anything other than 5 stars. I thoroughly enjoyed this. And some of the plot twists did get me. So like some of the little ones. So at least there's that. And then I read Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This is about a woman who steals her dead friend's manuscript and poses it as her own. And when I say friend, I say it very loosely because they're not really friends, but they pretend they are. I gave this 3 stars. I did not like it. I'm sorry, but I didn't like it. But I can recognize that it's not necessarily a bad book. It's just not for me. Like, personally, I struggle with enjoying a book when I don't like the narrator, and I did not like the main character in this. Not even like in a fun to hate way. It's just straight up did not like her. I found her to be insufferable. She's racist and entitled and selfish and two-faced, and she just doesn't have any redeeming qualities. So she was just sucking the enjoyment of the novel out. And I also guessed the plot twist. So when the big reveal happened, it was just like whatever. I was just not into it. Some parts were interesting though. Like I liked the bit on cancel culture and the racism in the publishing and film industry. I thought the bit about that was interesting. I just think she could have went about writing this in a different way. Yeah, that's like, I think that's all I have to say about this. Moving on, because I can't articulate my other thoughts. Moving on to the historical fiction. I only read one of these. I read Did You Hear About Kitty Carr by Crystal Smith Paul. This book gives major Evelyn Hugo vibes. I'd recommend this if you like that, and vice versa. They're both set in old Hollywood and tell the story of a person of color trying to make it in this racist society by pretending to be white. So, yeah, I love this. Kitty's story was so interesting to me, just like how Evelyn's was. The things she went through and had to give up to succeed, like, it was just so crazy. And like the shock. Why can I not speak? I need to learn how to articulate my thoughts better. But there's some things that she had to give up that were just so like mind blowing to me that she had to do that to succeed. It was crazy. And I also just love books set in old Hollywood. So I gave this 5 stars. There was nothing I disliked about it. I love stories like this about old Hollywood and people trying to succeed in it despite their adversities. That was the word. It was just really good. And I like how the story unfolded and everything. Okay, so 5 stars. And that's the end of the reading wrap up. That's the last book I read. And we ended on a good note. 5 stars. So, yeah, that's all I gotta say. I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.